Welcome to Tech Recipes. Hello friends, welcome to the new series on a Spring Boot recipes. In this series, we are going to learn Spring Boot concept by doing things in a Spring or by doing things using Spring Boot. These are all going to be hands-on sessions with step by step. Since this is the first video, we are going to build a Hello World Spring Boot application. So without further ado, let's get started. So why Spring Boot? So if you look at Spring Boot, it contains two words, Spring and Boot. Now Spring here stands for a standard Spring framework, which is used to build enterprise Java application. And Boot stands for bootstrap. So basically the combination means Spring Boot is something that allows you to bootstrap a Spring based Java application. Now why Spring Boot? So one of the first point is super easy development. So Spring Boot makes it very easy to build a standalone production grade Spring application. It also allows you to write apps that can just run. So you don't need any application server where you are going to deploy your war. You can write your application and just simply run it. It has the embedded servers. Also, it provides an opinionated view of a Spring platform. What it means, it provides automatic configuration for various libraries wherever possible. So that means it will take very less time to write a Spring application when you are using Spring Boot. Now, these are the steps that we are going to follow to build our Hello World application using Spring Boot. Our step 1 will be to go to the Spring Initializer and download the base code that we are going to need. Then import that base code project into IntelliJ IDEA. Then I will walk you through the base code that we get by default. Then in step 3, we will create our own controller for a Hello World application. Then run the application and test our code as well within the IntelliJ IDEA. Once it is done, we will also see how to build a jar file and run the application from the command line, because your application in the production would run from the jar. So that's why this step would be important. So let's look at the code now. For this first step, we are going to go to the start.spring.io. We will select project as Maven, language as Java, Spring Boot version as 3.0.2. Let's modify group name to give it a Tech Recipes. Artifact name, we will change it to Spring Hello World. Let's make it Spring Boot Hello World. And let's modify the description as well as Spring Boot Hello World. I will keep package name simple. Packaging would be jar and Java version 17. We will add one dependency here. Since we are going to build a REST website, I will add it Spring Boot. Let's generate the code. Now for the second step, we are going to import this project or this code into the IntelliJ IDEA. So I am going to select this folder, Spring Boot Hello World, and will import it into the IntelliJ. So all the code for this application is there on the GitHub link, which is shared in the description. Now let's look at the code that comes by default. So if you look at the pom.xml, you will see all the properties that we provided while generating this project. And in the src folder, under the main project, you will see Spring Boot Hello World application is created, and it has an annotation like @Spring Boot application. Now I'm simply going to run this application. You can see that the application is getting started. From the log, you can see that there is an embedded Tomcat server, and also at the end it says started Tomcat on 8080 port. I'm going to simply stop the application now. Now in the next step, we are going to create a new HelloWorldController. So I will create a new package controller, and inside this package, I'm going to add a Hello World controller class. Now since we are going to build a REST application, I am going to use a REST controller notation which comes with a Spring framework. And we are going to build a get endpoint which is going to return us a hello world string. So I'm going to use a get mapping annotation for that. We need to write a new method here which will return a string hello world. So let us write a method say hello and return a string from this which is hello world. Now this get mapping also takes argument for our URL. For this example I'm going to simply keep it as a slash. So now let's run our application. You will see in the log that Spring Boot hello world application is started in 8.9 seconds. Now in the browser, let's try to open the localhost :8080 port where our application is running. You can see the hello world has been written from our application. Our next step is to build a jar file and run the same application. If you see, the Maven life cycles are all the Maven life cycle you can see here in the tab. So I'm going to run the package action out of it. Now the package will build the entire Spring Boot application. It will also run the test cases which are there, and eventually it will build a jar file. So now you can see it is building a jar. So you can look at the path where the jar file is created. You can see under the target folder the jar file is generated. So I'm going to simply copy the path. I have started a command prompt. Now I am going to move into the path that I have copied where the jar resides, and I'm going to run the command java-jar and the name of the jar file. In that way we can also start a Spring Boot application using a jar file. You can see the application is getting started. You can see the Tomcat is initialized, then at port 8080 Tomcat web server is started, and also our log saying that Spring Boot application is started. Now you can again go back to the browser, click on the localhost 8080. The application will work. So to summarize, what we have seen so far is we followed all these 4 steps to build a hello world Spring Boot application. In step 1, we went to the Spring Initializer, we created a base project, we imported it to the Intializr, we wrote our hello world application, we ran it from the idea first, and then we created a jar file and we run the application from the command line. So this was it for this session. I will see you in the next session.